Most of all, I dislike cunning and deceitful people who are ready to do the most vile things just to get their goal. I highly disapprove of this. My wife was the victim of one of these people, but I can't understand. Did I really marry such a naive woman? Or was it her plan to cheat on me? I'll try to figure it out. This is Cal Turner speaking. There's not a lot of noteworthy background in my life. Just an ordinary guy with ordinary aspirations. A loving spouse, a decent job, and kids. My wife Helen, whom I adore, seemed to share my interests. Or at least, that's what I believed. The tale I'm about to tell is when I discovered that Helen and I weren't as aligned in our interests as I had assumed. It all began on a typical evening after work. Not during a dark and stormy night, as you might expect from a dramatic story opening. But let's stick with that cliché for effect. So, as I was saying, it all started one night when I returned home from work. My wife Helen was sitting on the couch in the living room watching TV. When I came in, she turned it off. I sniffed, but there were no smells coming from the kitchen. What happened? Do you want to go out tonight? Please tell me you didn't invite Kelsey. I won't be able to eat at the McCrap anymore. Kelsey's with your mother. I wanted to talk to you without interference, she said. And there was a frank note in her voice that hinted at the upcoming intimacy. Helen continued, I know we shouldn't discuss our role-playing game, but I want you to know how much I like it. I want us to bring what we do on Wednesdays into our bedroom more often. What do you say, cowboy? With that, she lifted her skirt. Confused, I could only ask, what kind of role-playing game is this? I know you like to keep things a secret, but you spoiled me. I want to spend our special moments more than once a week. But I have one burning question. How do you manage to make such an instrument during our meetings? I was terrified. Helen, I don't know anything about role-playing on Wednesdays, and I certainly don't know how to enlarge the instrument. Please explain to me what is going on. Helen's face also showed shock. Do you remember our Wednesday meetings at the Marcus Inn and Suites? Doesn't that sound familiar to you? I shook my head. Oh my God. About 6 weeks ago, you sent me an email suggesting a way to diversify our bed life. You advised me to go to room 301 at the Marquis Hotel. I had to take off my outer clothes, put on the mask that was on the nightstand, and lie on the bed, not moving, even when you come in. After the session, you will untie me and leave. I should have kept my mask on until you left. We had to act like we were having an affair and keep it a secret from our spouses. You said we shouldn't discuss this for a week. I couldn't believe how much it improved our lives. It was amazing. It seemed to me that your instrument has become bigger than usual. Oh, Cal, please tell me it was you. Tears welled up in her eyes. I apologize, Helen. I've never accompanied you to the Marquis or any other place for that matter. Wait, are you saying that I've been intimate with someone other than my husband 6 times? She rushed into the bathroom and threw up. After cleaning up, she returned to the living room where I was left completely perplexed. Cal, you have to forgive me. I really believed it was you. I was so happy. Now I feel like a fool. Someone tricked me. Damn it, that's why he never talked to me in the dark. He wanted me to keep thinking it was you. Oh, Cal, please tell me you forgive me. She burst into uncontrollable sobs. I barely managed to get out of myself. I do not know what to say. It's just unbelievable. Who could do this to us, and for what reason? How could you not realize that it wasn't me after 6 attempts? I thought it was you. Yes, everything was different, but that was the point of our game, to explore something new. I thought it was just another side of you. Well, maybe you should find out who this guy is, who is obviously better than me in bed, so you can be with him instead of me. My anger was growing. Don't you dare talk to me like that. I want to find him, okay? I want to get back at him. Do you understand that he did this against my will? I composed myself. I apologize, Helen. I hadn't considered your perspective enough. Let's approach this rationally, if possible. Who might have a motive for such cruelty towards us? It would have to be someone who harbors strong animosity towards either me, you, or both of us. On the other hand, it could be someone who is secretly in love with you and is developing a plan to get you to be intimate without having to convince you to cheat on your husband. Helen shuddered. The idea that someone is fixated on intimacy with me is unsettling. You mean aside from me, of course. My attempt at humor fell flat. Hey, you weren't attacked. I was attacked. I'm sorry, okay, where did the letter come from? I really regret not saving it. The sender, whoever it was, ordered the message to be erased. They came from your work email. This means that someone must have access to my computer. I often leave it on when I leave the table for a while. The problem is that this leaves us with a lot of possibilities. Is he still waiting for you? Yeah. He usually makes arrangements for our meetings in advance, hinting at what to expect. He mentioned that he wanted to prepare me for the meeting in advance so that I would be delighted. I had to delete this email and I was not allowed to reply. Now I understand why. Did that stir something in you? Yes, but remember, I believed it was you I'd be intimate with. It's frustrating, Cal. I wasn't imagining being with another man. It was you I envisioned. Has he reached out about this Wednesday? No, not yet. I plan to express my dissatisfaction directly. Weren't you supposed to avoid emailing him? He provided a phone number for cancellations. I had to use it once. All right, hold off for now. Keep me informed when he contacts you again. There was no intimacy in the house that night and the next. I was hesitant to do this, knowing that someone else had recently done it. Helen expressed her fear of recalling her meeting with another man, fearing that it would look like cheating on me and spoil the moment. We both agreed to take STD tests. On Monday, Helen received an email from her secret lover, which she shared with me when I returned from work. He confirmed that he was ready to come on Wednesday and joked that he wanted to convince her to try something new. Helen said that she considered it as part of exploring new activities in their game, although she had previously considered it too extreme. I advised her to call him and leave a message, hinting that his wish might come true and guaranteeing his presence. Tuesday afternoon, I visited the Marquise and had a conversation with the receptionist. I confirmed his availability for duty the following day, which he affirmed. Inquired about gaining access to the room my wife would be using the next day. He seemed unsurprised, having noticed that the individuals frequenting the room weekly were not a married couple. He quoted a fee of $200, to which I agreed. Wednesday arrived and we prepared to confront the man. Helen entered the room and proceeded as usual. Moments later, I observed the man entering the room. It turned out to be Richie Hammond, notorious for his advances towards women in our office, regardless of their marital status. Despite being married with 2 children, he seemed unfazed by the betrayal to his family. He had remarked on my wife's photo on my desk, repeatedly expressing envy for having such an attractive spouse. I always felt the urge to sanitize my office after his visits. I approached the front desk to retrieve my room key, but the clerk refused to hand it over. I'm really worried about losing my job, he confided. The boss reprimanded all of us about letting anyone but the paying guest in. Afternoon delights are a significant part of our business. Sorry, mate. I was furious. My mind raced with thoughts of what could be happening in the room. Helen was meant to follow her usual routine, and I was supposed to intervene before things went too far. Panic set in. Finally, I resorted to a threat. If you don't give me that key, I'll kick the door down and call the police. Do you think your boss wants to deal with that? I eventually got the key, but it was several minutes later than planned. When I entered the room, Richie was standing behind her. He stopped for a moment. Helen, still unaware of my presence, begged him to continue. Richie resumed his actions. I grabbed him by the hair and pulled him aside. Helen seemed disappointed until I asked her to take off her mask. Then she began to cry. I told her to get dressed. Richie was sitting on one of the chairs and looked surprisingly relaxed. Well, at least I did it first than you did, he remarked. I moved towards him with fury in my eyes. He just pointed to the corner where the camera was mounted on a tripod. Call, you don't want to hurt me. I have video recordings of all our sessions with your wife. Do you really want me to make them public? I am sure that I could get a significant amount for them on various sites. Alternatively, I could give them to your friends and relatives for free. Or we could keep the existing arrangement. I see her once a week, and you see her every other day. You are a disgusting person. Give me the videos, and you will never have anything to do with my wife again. Or else? Or I will do it. I'll do it. You can't think of anything that wouldn't embarrass you or tarnish your wife's reputation, can you? You're finished. Richie chuckled. So you're okay with abandoning your wife and daughter, leaving them with no husband or father and no means of support? Yeah, sure. Well, I'm getting bored of her now that I've had my fun. Here's the deal. I won't reach out to her anymore. But if she wants to call me, that's a different story." His grin widened. After Helen dressed, we left. She remained silent during the drive home, rushing inside to take a lengthy shower. I waited downstairs. When she finally emerged, she suggested we talk after dinner. We waited until after putting Kelsey to bed at 8:00. Dinner passed quietly, with Kelsey sharing stories about her day. At around 8:30, we sat at the kitchen table, ensuring our daughter was asleep. Helen broke the silence, asking, "What do we do now?" I'm not entirely certain. Finding a way to obtain the videos would greatly alleviate our problems. Currently, I can't envision any option besides resorting to burglary. But finding someone willing to do that is another challenge. If we involve the authorities, he'll likely argue that you consented, backed up by the videos suggesting your enjoyment. Even if he's apprehended, the videos could still surface. It's a hopeless situation. Do you have any suggestions? No, I think we're trapped. Perhaps we should attempt to leave this behind and move forward with our lives. Are you okay with that? No desire for retaliation? I'm worried that any action we take will only worsen the situation. Let's just let it go. The less we speak of it, the better, in my opinion. With that, she retired to bed. As has become the norm lately, I remained apart. A few months had passed. Helen remained pleasant and diligently carried out her usual household chores and childcare responsibilities. Our conversations at home mostly revolved around Kelsey, appointments, or phone messages. Meanwhile, our intimate life was struggling. At work, I made efforts to steer clear of Richie. Every time our eyes met, he wore the smirk of someone who had betrayed me. It felt like another painful jab. I longed to wipe that smirk off his face with my fist. I constantly searched for ways to retaliate against him, yet I always fell short of my objective. While lost in one of my revenge fantasies, I received a phone call. It was the receptionist from the Marquee. "What's up?" I answered. "Hey, chill out. I've got some intel you might find useful." "Interested?" "I'm not sure. What could you possibly have that would catch my attention?" "What about your wife and Richie? Seems they're up to their old shenanigans again." I attempted to speak, without showing any emotion despite feeling nauseous inside. It's difficult for me to believe that. She despises him. And why would he want to return to the Marquee after what happened there? "I'm not at the Marquee anymore. I'm employed at the Red Roof on Kingston Road now. When I spotted them, I inquired with the desk clerk I was replacing. He mentioned they've been frequenting the place for about a month every Wednesday, at the same time. If you need evidence, I can arrange it, let's say for $500. "Go to hell, both you and my wife." I hung up. I wanted to shed tears, but my anger overpowered me. Richie had promised to continue if my wife called him. I recalled her remarks about how much he had enjoyed being intimate with her. We had never gone this long without intimacy before, yet Helen seemed unaffected. Perhaps because she wasn't truly deprived. The only solution I could think of was to leave. I packed the essentials for a 3-day business trip and headed to the nearest motel, avoiding the Marquee or the Red Roof, where there was a bar. I checked into the Holiday Inn Express and went straight to the bar. I wasn't much of a drinker, so I asked the bartender for a recommendation. He suggested a Long Island iced tea. Initially, it tasted too mild, but my opinion changed by the second round. The delayed buzz hit me hard. I was well on my way to drowning my sorrows when I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Mind if I join you, Cal? I could use a shoulder to cry on, too." I spotted a statuesque woman with flowing jet-black hair. She exuded beauty. I inquired, "Pardon me, have we met before?" "Joan, Richie's spouse, at least for now. We crossed paths at the Christmas gathering last year." Upon closer inspection, I exclaimed, "How could I have overlooked someone so stunning? Did I just vocalize that?" Joan chuckled. "Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment." "How did you—" Why did you... Are you always this eloquent? Allow me to elucidate. I discovered today about Richie's latest indiscretion with your wife. I compensated the receptionist who phoned me $500 for evidence. I've reached my limit. Despite his assurances to mend his ways, I doubt he can resist. As for encountering you, purely coincidental. I needed some fresh air to clear my mind. My mother is looking after my 2 kids. When I saw you, memories of the Christmas party flooded back. Your expression mirrored my emotions, so I took the liberty to join you. If you prefer solitude, No, please stay. I'm just taken aback. I suspect we might have much to discuss. What would you like to drink? What do you have? Long Island tea. Damn, I adore those. My first time was with a Long Island tea. Well, make it a double. We spent several hours chatting and enjoying drinks. She was easy to talk to, and she had a fantastic, risky sense of humor. I felt that I really liked her. In the end, she suggested, well, it's either going to be a passionate meeting or we'll call it a late-night solo performance. What do you prefer? No matter how much I wanted to be intimate with you, I don't believe I couldn't perform at a level worthy of such an exceptional person like you. This is the most gracious rejection I've ever received. Trust me, this wasn't meant to be a rejection, and I really don't want to miss this opportunity. If we were ever close, I'd like it to happen when I'm at my best. Even then, I'd be worried if I'm good enough for you. Damn it. I haven't even taken out the trash, but it feels like I'm falling in love again. I should have known better than to drink iced tea from Long Island. I suggested, how about we have breakfast together tomorrow? I could call you, or if you're awake. Joan suggested, I have an idea. What if we sleep in the same bed so we know when the other one wakes up? You mean just to sleep? Just to sleep, but maybe you can convince me to share a little tenderness with you. I really don't want to sleep alone tonight. It sounds good to me. In your room or in mine? I have a suite. I use his credit card. He owes me. I took some of my things to her room. After we took a shower, we went to bed. Despite the fact that we were engaged in light hugs and kisses, we fell asleep after a few minutes. She woke up before me and elbowed me in the side. Wake up or I'll have to use the alarm clock. Drink your morning portion. God, how I longed to feel her lips on my lips. But I couldn't get rid of the feeling that it was too early to make a decision about cheating, even though our spouses had already done it. The thought occurred to me, I'm going to have to stock up on tea from Long Island if we're going to continue this relationship. Over breakfast at the adjacent Waffle House, we delved into a serious discussion about our marriages specifically. Both of us harbored a desire to end our relationships and seek retribution. The challenge lay in orchestrating divorces that wouldn't leave us worse off than our spouses. Joan confided, I dread returning to that house, especially considering it's solely in his name. I'd be content to disappear with the kids and leave him behind. How would you manage that financially? Wouldn't he pursue custody or support? My family has means. When I reached out to them last night, they pledged $100,000 into my personal account to facilitate our fresh start elsewhere and initiate divorce proceedings. Honestly, I'd prefer to vanish and let him handle the divorce. But what about your children's schooling? Wouldn't they miss their father? No, I homeschooled them and he only agreed to kids because it was a condition of our marriage. After the second child, I had my tubes tied. They probably wouldn't miss him much, and I doubt he'd miss them. He barely spends time with them and complains whenever he's asked to watch them while I'm out. I've long suspected he married me for my wealth. It doesn't bother me. I gained 2 wonderful daughters from the union. My parents haven't rushed to support me financially, but they did assist with the down payment on our house. They're not particularly fond of Richie. I expressed. The notion of simply departing hadn't crossed my mind until now. Similar to you, I'm not keen on returning home. However, we're both tied to the mortgage. Helen and Kelsey have never had a strong bond. Kelsey was a surprise addition to the family. I believe Helen resented pausing her career for a few years. Kelsey has always been close to her father. While I think Helen cares for her, I doubt she'd go to great lengths to bring her back. She knows I'll take good care of her. The more I think about it, the more appealing the idea of leaving becomes. Joan pondered. If leaving our spouses rather than dealing with a divorce seems best for both of us, the question is, do we do it together? As she gazed into my eyes, perhaps fueled by my own desires, I thought I saw affection reflected in her eyes. Within 24 hours, I found myself on the verge of something akin to love at first sight. It's nonsensical, but I'd say yes to accompanying you on one condition. My daughter comes along. I can hardly believe I'm uttering these words. I've never acted so impulsively, yet felt such gravity simultaneously. But I do have a question. Where would we go? Would we disclose our destination to anyone? That's technically two questions, but I won't nitpick. We need to thoroughly discuss every detail. Here's my initial idea. I have an Aunt Barbara, who owns a spacious cabin by Lake Champlain. Due to her struggles with MS, she can't reside there anymore, and was considering selling it. If it's available, it would be perfect, remote, with ample space for both kids and adults. The scenery is worthy of a National Geographic cover. It turned out that the cabin was available. Over the next few days, I stayed at the hotel, deliberately ignoring messages from Helen once I realized she had discovered my knowledge of her return to her Wednesday rendezvous with Richie. I sent her one message. I need some time away. I visited my workplace and handed in my resignation. While my boss was disappointed, he empathized with my situation, having experienced a painful divorce himself. He inquired if terminating Richie's employment would disrupt my plans concerning Helen. Given that others had also complained about Richie, I replied, "Go ahead." However, I requested that he delay the termination until I was ready to depart. Though I would have relished seeing Richie's reaction upon hearing the news, that was perhaps too much to hope for. I visited the bank and withdrew nearly all the funds from our joint accounts. Most of it went towards paying off the remaining mortgage. Despite her betrayal, I couldn't bring myself to take everything. We both contributed to household expenses. By giving her the house, Helen would be financially in a similar position as in a 50-50 divorce split. If she needed money, she could sell the house. I relinquished my claim to the house to simplify things for her. Then I stopped automatic payments for utilities and insurance. My health insurance would end when I left my job. I changed my life insurance beneficiary to Kelsey, held in trust. At night, Joan and I discussed how to effectively conceal our departure, minimize the impact on our children, and envision our future together. We abstained from intimacy. There was already enough emotional strain. Our decision to leave our spouses shouldn't be influenced by our relationship. I'm uncertain who felt more let down. By the third day, we had decided to proceed with our plan to escape. The following day, while Helen was at work, I went to the house and gathered what I deemed necessary for Kelsey and a few of my belongings. Contemplating leaving a note, all I could muster was, "I hope it was worth it." Along with my wedding ring, I left. My last errand of the day was Kelsey's school. I informed them of Kelsey's supposed doctor's appointment, expressing regret for not informing them sooner. To Kelsey, I announced a vacation trip. When Kelsey inquired about Mommy joining, I replied, "Not this time." To my surprise, she responded, "Good. Sometimes she's no fun." After school, Joan retrieved her children from her mother's place. By 5, we hit the road. Aunt Barb graciously invited us to stay in her lake cabin, having recently renovated it and experiencing some seller's remorse. Lucky for us, we traveled in 2 vehicles. Initially, Kelsey rode with me, but after a few stops, where the 3 girls got to know each other, they started taking turns riding with either me or Joan. By the time we reached the log cabin, Joan and I had lost the master bedroom. The girls insisted on sticking together, forming a new trio. Fortunately, one of the guest bedrooms, conveniently located next to the second bathroom, suited Joan and me just fine. One of Joan's children questioned why Joan and I were sharing a bedroom when there was an empty one available. Joan explained that the bedroom we were in was designated for the adults. Her eldest daughter remarked that she thought adults usually had their own room, a sentiment echoed by Kelsey. Both had noticed that their parents hadn't spent many nights together in the past few months. After the day's excitement faded, the children went to bed and quickly fell asleep, all three sharing the same king-size bed. Joan and I enjoyed a glass of wine, courtesy of Barbara, who had stocked the small wine cabinet as a housewarming gift. Joan grinned mischievously and said, "Now that we've both left our spouses, are you ready to showcase your skills in bed?" I cringed inwardly, realizing she remembered my boast at the Holiday Inn Express. I'm worried I may have raised the bar too high with my comments. My ex-wife didn't seem too impressed with my abilities in that department. If she chose my worthless ex-husband, I don't put much stock in her judgment of anything, especially in bed. And don't worry, I plan to help improve your performance as much as possible. Hope you don't mind me taking charge. My wish was enthusiastically confirmed by her words. We proceeded to the master bedroom and engaged in intimacy. And I really mean intimacy. I was pleasantly surprised by the contrast in love for Joan compared to Helen. It was a positive difference. She had a different smell, texture, taste, and way of speaking. That night, I set a new personal record for the time and number of sessions. I've lost track of time. Before we fell asleep, Joan noticed, "I think this solves the compatibility issue." We hugged and hugged each other tightly, remembering her comment. The following morning, we relished the shopping excursion, ensuring the cabin was stocked with our desired provisions, including plenty of kid-friendly food. I gladly took on frequent grilling duties whenever the weather permitted. Financially, we were stable, with Joan still possessing most of her inheritance and myself having some savings after settling the mortgage. Only Aunt Barb was aware of our whereabouts, and upon hearing our circumstances, she willingly agreed to keep our secret from Joan's parents. As time passed, Joan assumed the role of homeschool teacher for our three children, while I found work as a handyman, learning on the job. The girls gradually lost interest in or longing to see their biological parents as months went by. Eventually, they began referring to us as Mom and Dad. The children thoroughly enjoyed the lake, wetlands, and forests surrounding our home, finding solace and freedom in nature after feeling stifled in the city. Our neighbor Greta, who had raised her own family in this environment, generously offered us advice and support, evolving from a friend to a grandmotherly figure for our kids. We asked her not to pry into the children's pasts, as both Joan and I had gone through difficult divorces. She agreed to respect our wishes. From time to time, Joan and I discussed reconnecting with our past lives. We were concerned that any attempt at contact could potentially lead someone to discover our whereabouts. Apart from worrying about Helen and Richie, we also feared the possibility of law enforcement pursuing us for kidnapping and/or fraud due to our evasion of a legal divorce and division of assets. We ultimately decided that using the internet was the safest method to reach out. Greta agreed to have internet installed at her house on the condition that we teach her how to use it. She was eager to communicate with her own grandchildren, feeling their absence more acutely in the company of our children. The question of whether to disclose our true story to Greta was debated, but we had not yet done so. Everything was going smoothly, and we were apprehensive about disrupting the harmony. It took another month for Greta to have satellite TV with Wi-Fi set up. We instructed her on using email and Skype, and witnessing her joy at connecting with her grandchildren in real time was deeply gratifying. One day, while Greta took the girls out on the lake, we searched the internet for information. That's when we stumbled upon a notice of the sale of my former house. It seemed Helen was in need of money. A year after our departure, notices of divorce on grounds of abandonment had been posted for both Helen and Richie. Aunt Barbara informed Joan that her parents had sent an annual Christmas recap of the year. Joan's mother included a personal note to Barbara, aware of their closeness. Barbara suspected that Joan's mother had guessed she knew Joan's whereabouts, considering the message a warning. Helen, determined to locate Cal, had hired a private investigator who had visited Joan's parents and was aware of Aunt Barbara. The investigator cautioned Barbara to anticipate someone investigating soon. Barbara refrained from calling, fearing surveillance on her calls, given Joan's mother's penchant for spy movies. Barbara advised Cal and Joan to act swiftly. We lacked sufficient funds to make a significant move without assurance of imminent financial support. Instead of seeking further assistance from Joan's parents, I opted to take a risk and reach out to my former employer via email for guidance on job prospects. In response, he informed me that a private investigator had contacted him. He had expressed displeasure at my abrupt departure and conveyed indifference regarding my whereabouts. Subsequently, my former boss inquired about my opinion on Flagstaff, Arizona. I admitted my unfamiliarity with the area. He then mentioned a vacancy for a branch manager position there. Assuring me of an interview and eventual job offer, he explained that the hiring individual was his brother, who had previously attempted to recruit staff from my previous workplace. We headed towards Flagstaff. Along the journey, I worried that my transition to an employee might leave a trace detectable by a skilled private investigator. Just before crossing into Arizona, an idea struck me. We booked a hotel room with a double bed and allowed the girls to swim in the pool. Joan did her best to ease my anxiety about the interview. True to my former boss's assurance, his brother was mainly interested in my availability to start. I explained that I needed to establish an LLC and assign a name distinct from my own for the corporation. I proposed that instead of hiring me as an employee, he could engage the services of my corporation. He agreed, recognizing that personal service contracts often incurred lower costs than employing staff. We discovered a house in the desert, where the landscape differed greatly from what we were accustomed to, but the children quickly adapted. I believe they were relieved to escape the harsh winter conditions of our previous location. It took a few months for the children to acclimate and a couple more for Joan and me to feel secure again. On that pivotal night, as Joan and I were extinguishing lights in preparation for bed, there came a knock at the door. Given the late hour and our lack of nearby neighbors, I grew suspicious. I retrieved my .22 rifle and loaded it cautiously. Peering through the peephole, I recognized the visitor, Helen. A wave of conflicting emotions flooded my mind. My heart raced and my stomach churned. I called out to Joan that we had a guest. I welcomed Helen inside just as Joan entered the room. "I presume this is Helen," I affirmed with a nod. Helen dove right in. "I figured the kids were asleep. I waited until I saw you start turning off lights. Didn't want to disturb them." "Yeah, they've been out for about half an hour." "Good. Geez, you're one elusive guy." She chuckled. "Let's clear the air from the get-go. I'm not here to stir up trouble. After you two split and Richie lost his job, he moved in with me. Didn't take long living with him to realize I'd swapped a Mercedes for a Yugo. Don't get me wrong, I was initially attracted to him by his closeness, and he was good at it. But a relationship needs more than just that. Gave him a deadline to find a job and start contributing to expenses. Didn't take me seriously at first, but he sure did when the sheriff's deputy showed up and gave him the ultimatum to leave or get arrested. Heard he found a job in another town. In terms of my life, I managed to recover with the assistance of a therapist. Since then, I've been quite self-sufficient emotionally and financially. Private investigators don't come cheap. After a year, I initiated divorce proceedings because I realized I had lost both you and Kelsey. Despite my wishes for different behavior, I understood the necessity of moving forward. By filing for abandonment, I could dictate the terms of the divorce settlement and claim what little remained of your belongings. I genuinely believe I've moved on. In fact, I'm currently seeing someone whom I have high hopes for. At the very least, I'm confident I won't repeat the same mistakes I made with you. If you've moved on, Helen, why are you here? You're not one for small talk, huh? All right. The reason I'm here is for closure. I sank into a deep depression when I finally had time alone to reflect on what I'd done and what I'd lost. I couldn't bear the weight of it without expressing how truly sorry I am and absolving you of any blame for your actions. I needed to ensure you didn't carry any guilt. I hope you don't harbor any resentment towards me. While I seek your forgiveness, I understand if it's too much to ask. Once again, I apologize. I wish you, Joan, and Kelsey all the happiness. That's all I needed to say. Now, I feel closure. What about Kelsey? Were you planning to see her again? Will you be seeking custody? I won't lie. Initially, I had hoped for joint custody at the very least. But as time passed, I realized that if she settled into her new family, disrupting that might do more harm than good. As wonderful as she is, I don't think I could manage her alone without your support. Meeting now might stir up emotions that would linger for a long time. However, I do want to know how she's doing. Does she ever mention me or wonder about me? How is she doing in school? Joan replied, "The girls haven't shown much curiosity about you or Richie, but we haven't discouraged them from asking. We explained that you and Richie no longer wanted to be married to us, but wished for our new family's happiness. So far, they haven't expressed a desire to return. However, they do occasionally wonder how you both are doing. I can assure you that they have adapted well. Kelsey and my daughters have formed a close-knit trio. I'm homeschooling Kelsey alongside my daughters, and she's performing academically 2 grade levels above where she would be in public school. Helen. I genuinely love Kelsey as much as my biological children." Helen welled up with tears. "Thank you. Have you and Richie tied the knot?" I replied, "No. We weren't certain that both of us were divorced." I had a feeling that might be the case. "Well, I've got a wedding gift for you two. It's a set of your divorce certificates, perfect for framing." Her attempt at humor seemed like a defense against tears. "Richie and I had the same divorce lawyer. Now, if you want, you can become a legal family. You'll notice we both relinquished full custody of our kids to you two. You should be able to apply to adopt each other's children." After seeing Joan and me tear up at the good news, Helen said, "I should get going," and headed for the door. I reached out and grabbed her arm. Through tears, Helen whispered, "Please, Cal, just let me leave. I promise I won't bother you again. If you ever need to reach me about Kelsey, I still have the same cell phone number." I let go, and she left. Joan fetched us each a glass of wine. We needed something to steady our nerves. We sat quietly for a while. I looked at Joan, and after a few minutes, I saw her smile. "So, who's going to propose to whom?" I was smiling now. "After careful consideration and deep thought, I suggest that whoever achieves satisfaction first tonight make me an offer." We both dashed off toward the bedroom. Helen drove a distance away from Cal and Joan's house to ensure she wouldn't be spotted. Parking by the side of the road, she finally allowed herself to release the pent-up sobs she had been holding back. Taking stock of her situation, Helen realized her funds were nearly depleted, having only a meager sum of less than $200 left after paying the private investigator who claimed to have succeeded. Her plan regarding meeting Cal revolved around 2 options. Her preferred scenario involved finding Cal struggling to handle Kelsey without her presence, with Joan either absent or their relationship having soured. In this scenario, Helen believed Cal would forgive her, allowing her to reintegrate into their lives permanently. She had packed her car with all her belongings in anticipation of this outcome, even if it meant they would remarry. Option 2 entailed finding Cal and Kelsey thriving. Perhaps by then he and Joan would be married with a child of their own. If that were the case, she would claim she came for closure and present them with divorce papers as a parting gift. Option 2 was the most challenging, but she had contingency plans in place. Her closure plan involved leaving the new blended family and heading to the nearest major city to start afresh without the worry of encountering them again. In the glove compartment, a Ziploc bag held Cal's wedding ring, her own wedding rings, and other jewelry she no longer needed. Selling them would provide her with the necessary funds for a fresh start. After shedding some tears, Helen resumed driving. Phoenix, here I come. Perhaps it's a sign from God. Maybe I too can emerge from the ashes.
That's the end of the story. Write your opinion in the comments about this story. It will be interesting for us to read it. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe to our channel so as not to miss new, equally interesting and exciting stories. Good luck!